Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight with my full review of the iFi Audio Hip Dac2. This was loaned to me for review by iFi Audio. The current price is $189 US, and this is a portable USB DAC with a built-in headphone amp. I'll give you a closer look in just a minute. This has one input for your music. It's a USB port on the back of it, and it is a Type A plug or a Type A USB, and it is a male plug, which is backwards or reverse from most portable units, and iFi claims it is stronger and more durable that way, and they do supply a cable to connect to that, and I'll show you that in a couple minutes. But anyway, it also has a USB-C type port on the back, and that's for charging. And then on the front of the unit, it has two headphone outputs, a 3.5 millimeter single-ended and a 4.4 millimeter balanced output. This unit supports PCM, DXD, DSD, and MQA, and it's not just MQA rendering, but it's actual MQA decoding. The power output is rated, and this would be at 1% distortion, at 280 milliwatts into 32 ohms from the single-ended output, and 400 milliwatts at 32 ohms from the balanced output. The battery in this is a lithium polymer type, and it's rated at 2200 milliamp hours, and it's iFi claims a expected runtime of 8 hours. Of course, that's going to depend on if you're using the high gain or low gain. It's going to depend on if you're using the bass boost, and it's going to depend on your volume, but that's what they claim the hours at, and I've never run it that long to actually know, so I'm not sure. I can't dispute that. The size of this unit is 4 inches long and 2.8 inches wide and 0.6 inches tall. iFi claims a weight of 135 grams, and it came in on my kitchen scale at 142 grams, so we're pretty close there. This unit does come with 3 cables, and this one here first, this is it's about a foot long, and this is a USB female to USB-A male type N. So you plug this into the unit, then you can plug this into any Type A USB port on your computer, tablet, whatever you have, your laptop. Then it has, this is a USB A female also, and then with the USB-C on the other end, and I can use this to plug this portable unit into my Android tablet, this end into the iFi, and then that end into my tablet, the USB-C. And then it also comes with a USB-A to USB-C, and this is for your charging. You can plug it into any USB port or a USB charger, and it says 5 volts max, but that's pretty much standard for USB chargers. And then you got your USB-C at this end to plug into the Hip Dac2. So anyway, I did want to mention also that it has 2 gain settings, and it has what's called true bass, which is a bass boost. And I couldn't find on the iFi site what the actual number of decibels a boost is, but I know on the Zen DAC and the Zen Can, the bass boost is 12 decibels on those, and comparing this back and forth with the Zen DAC, it seems that the boost is about the same, so I'm guessing about 12 decibels. So anyway, I did want to give you a closer look at the unit. Has an aluminum casing, which is a, I think they call it sunset orange, and move in a little bit closer here. You've got your first button here is your gain, which is you have either low or high, and when it's on high gain, a little LED light lights up to let you know. Then you've got your bass boost here, which is called true bass, and once again, if the light is on, you've got the bass boost on, and if it's off, you don't. And then this is your on off and your volume. It clicks off, and then you've got your typical volume knob here, and then you've got your two headphone outputs. The first one here is your 4.4 millimeter balanced output, and then you've got your 3.5 millimeter single-ended output. And then on the back here, you've got your USB Type A plug, which is a female or a male version. The male end, and the cord that plugs in is female. And then you've got your USB-C plug over here for charging. And like I said, this unit, I was actually surprised. It's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. I assumed, it was going to be quite a bit bigger. I was really surprised. It's really compact. I mean, it's like half the size of my iPhone 11. So anyway, to test this unit, the equipment I used was to supply my USB source was my HP desktop computer and my Android tablet, and the music on those were from CDs that were ripped onto the computer in WAV lossless format. And as far as comparison, I will admit that this is the first portable unit that I have reviewed, so I don't have any other portable units to compare it to. I don't have much experience with portables, so all I could do is compare it to something non-portable in about the same price range. And I thought the best thing I had to compare it to is the Zen DAC, which you can see sitting here behind me on my desk that I've had for quite a while. I really like the Zen DAC, and on my last best of the year video, I rated it, and in fact, I think 2 years in a row I've rated it the best budget DAC amp, and I liked it so much that when I finished reviewing it, I did buy it from iFi, and that's the original Zen DAC, and I don't believe that's available anymore. And now you can get the Zen DAC2, which is a little more expensive. I think that was about $129 retail, and now the Zen DAC2 is $189, which is the same price as the Hip Dac2, which is the subject of this review. The difference that I know of is that the original Zen DAC accepted MQA signals, but it was only MQA rendering, and where the new one actually decodes the MQA signal. So I'm not sure if there's other differences, but I did want to point out and make sure you were aware that this is the original Zen DAC that I'm comparing this to. And in comparison, I've decided that this little DAC, I mean, this thing sounds really good. There's a really good DAC in this and a really good amp. And I was actually surprised to find out. I looked at the statistics of both this and the Zen DAC, and this actually has a little bit more power. But I did realize that when I was comparing the two, that at any headphone that I plugged in, I had to be about, using a clock scale. Say I was at 10 o'clock on this amp to be at a normal listening level with a headphone. I had to be like one step higher, like 11 o'clock on the Zen DAC to be at the same listening level. And I went back, compared the power, and the Zen DAC is rated at 230 milliwatts from the single-ended output and 330 from the balanced, where this the Hip Dac is rated at 280 and 400. So this does, actually have a little bit more power than the Zen DAC. I'm sorry. I keep thinking Zen Can in my mind. I had that for a while, and which was really nice, but I didn't have the opportunity to keep that one. But anyway, so this does sound very similar. It has a very similar tone balance and just a very similar overall sound. I would say that this and the Zen DAC are both a little, just slightly on the warm side of neutral. And I guess that would be the DACs that are built into them. I think this uses a Burr Brown chip in it, and they tend to have a little bit warmer sound than some of the other brands of DAC chips. And so I really do like the sound of it. Like I said, they both sound really good. They sound very similar. They both have solid bass. They both, like I said, just slightly on the warm side of neutral. They're both very clean, detailed, have very clean highs with good extension, and they both have a really pretty wide sound stage. There's a lot of distance and some pretty good layering to it. So I really, I don't find any faults, especially at the price. I mean, like I said, I voted the Zen DAC my number one combination amp DAC for someone on a budget, and I still stand with that. It's just a really great unit, and this has a really similar sound. I did compare this to, well, I tried this, I tested it with 8 different headphones, because the question I ask, or I hear most asked about any portable unit is it compatible with one headphone or another? And the biggest question is, because some headphones are really sensitive, don't need a lot of power. Other headphones are a lot more demanding and need a lot more power. So the question is, people throw out the name of a headphone and want to know if, the given portable amp DAC has enough power. So I did try this with 8 different headphones, and I did write down some notes that I'm going to have to go to, because there was just too many numbers to remember to just state this off the top of my head. So I'll start with the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS. And all of these, except for the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, I was using the 4.4 millimeter balanced output, and I'll point out when I get to the Sandara, I used both. I tried it with both, because the Sandara is pretty power hungry and pretty demanding, so I wanted to try it with both the balanced output and the single-ended output. And I'll tell you right now, I said this about the Zen DAC, that not only does it have more power from the balanced output, but in my opinion, it just sounds better from the balanced output. I think it has slightly better clarity, and I think it has a little bit more width and a little bit more depth to the soundstage, a little bit more of a 3D holographic sound coming from the balanced output, as opposed to the single-ended output. So with either of these, the Zen DAC or the Zen Can actually, or the Hip Dac2, I would recommend a balanced cable, and because they just sound, it's not a huge difference, but there's a little bit more power available, and they both just sound a little bit better from the balanced output. And if you can see in the picture behind me, that's a picture of the Hip Dac2 using a Mesa silver-plated cable, which has a 4.4 millimeter balanced connection at the amp end, and you can't see it in the picture, but that's actually connected to the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS, which works out really well with this. It's sort of, it's easier to drive than a Sandara, but not super easy. It does need a little power. So anyway, getting back to my list I made, the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS from the 4.4 millimeter output with the power boost on, the volume knob was at about 11 o'clock at a normal listening level. So it had enough power to sound good. I'm not saying that it brings everything out of that headphone that is there, a little more power. Usually with Hi-Fi Man planar headphones, If they're underpowered, they'll play loud enough, but they usually lose a little bit of the sub bass, the extension. They lose a little bit of the dynamics and impact on the bass. That's normally where Hi-Fi Man headphones lose out if they're underpowered. So, but in my opinion, the Edition XS does sound really good. But like I said, the power boost on, volume knob at about 11 o'clock for normal listening level. I tried the LSA HP2, which is a dynamic headphone and quite a bit more efficient. And once again, from the 4.4 millimeter output, I was running at 12 o'clock on the volume knob, but that was with no power boost. That was on low gain. And actually, if I went to high gain, I was down probably about 10 o'clock on the volume knob. Then the Hi-Fi Man Sandara, which everyone knows is pretty power hungry. I was, once again, from the balanced output, I was at about 11 o'clock on the volume knob, so it's pretty close to where the Edition XS was. And then I did try it from the 3.5 millimeter single-ended output, and I had to jump up to about 12 o'clock on the volume knob, and it sounded pretty good, but I noticed that from the balanced output, it sounded more dynamic, and it just had more weight and punch to the bass. So I recommend at least 1 watt of power for the Sandara. From your headphone amp, this is rated at 400 milliwatts. So it does a good job, but I'm not saying it's going to bring absolutely everything out of the Sandara that's there. I would say it brings the Sandara to about 95% of its potential. With more power, if you have a large amp with unlimited power, you might get a little bit more weight in the bass, a little bit more dynamics to the bass. That's going to be your basic difference. But it does sound good. So, I would consider this amp very adequate for the Sandara or the Edition XS, which needs about the same amount of power. I did try the ZMF Atrium from this. That's the new ZMF headphone that just came out. And that's a dynamic driver, but it is a 300 ohm headphone. So you're going to need higher voltage to power that. And this little DAC amp, it seemed to have plenty. I was from the balanced output. I did have the power boost on, so I was on high gain. But I only needed the volume knob at about 1030 for normal listening levels. So worked out really well, and that's about a $2,700 headphone. So, a lot higher up than what most people are going to use with a $189 DAC amp. But anyway, it sounded really good. It didn't sound like a cheap amp. It didn't sound like a cheap DAC. I was still really impressed listening to this with a really, it's considered a high-end headphone. And if there was anything wrong with the sound of this amp DAC, that headphone would have brought it out. And I didn't notice any, problems. It's not up there with, $2,000 desktop amps and DACs and stuff like that. But it's, it takes you most of the way there. Like I said, it's just a really good sounding amp DAC. And for the price, I think it's great. But anyway, I tried also the Hi-Fi Man Aria, and this would be the third version, the stealth version, which is easier to drive than the original, the version 1 or 2. The version 1 and version 2 were actually harder to drive than the Sandara, where the version 3 is actually easier. So from the balanced output and the boost on, I only needed the volume knob at about 1030 for the Aria to be at a normal listening level, and really sounded good. That headphone has extreme detail in the mid-range and treble, and once again, that's a headphone that's going to reveal any problems with the DAC or amp, and once again, I heard no problems. So Then I tried the Hi-Fi Man 400 SE, and the 400 SE is actually harder to drive than the Sandara or the Edition XS. So that it's up there pretty close to the Hi-Fi Man HE560, which I didn't try on this because the 560 I only have, that uses 2.5 millimeter plugs at the headphone end, and the only cable I had for that was, well, I have two cables for it. I have one with 3.5 single-ended, or I have a balanced, but it's a 4-pin full-size XLR, so I would only be able to try that from the single-ended output of this, and I didn't. But the 400 SE is real similar in power demand, and I tried it from the balanced output with the boost on, and needed the volume at about 12 o'clock at normal listening level, but it didn't sound underpowered. I mean, it did a pretty decent job. This is a really hard to drive headphone, and yeah, that headphone would like a little more power than this amp can put out to sound its best, but this amp did a, you know, very respectable job with a very hard to drive 400 SE. And then I also tried the Grotto SR80E, which is a dynamic headphone that's pretty easy to drive, and I was only didn't need the power boost on, was on low gain, and was only at about, well, I was at about 12 o'clock with low gain, and about 10 o'clock on the volume knob with high gain on the power boost. And I did want to mention that the bass boost, which is called True Bass, excuse me just a second. Anyway, the True Bass, which is a bass boost, and I believe that it's at 12 decibels like the Zen DAC and the Zen can. Anyway, in my opinion, for any of the headphones I listen to, it's just too much. That's too much bass boost for me. I kind of like a little bit of extra bass, but I'm more in like the 3 to 5 decibel range. I wish that there was like a middle step, maybe 6 decibels of boost, because same thing with the Zen DAC. I rarely ever use the bass boost. It's just too much. But that's with most headphones, but I'm really not into IEMs and earbuds and things, and I would assume with earbuds the bass boost would probably be a really good feature, because you're probably going to want that much extra bass. But so all the headphones that I've mentioned already, I didn't use the bass boost because it was just too much. But with the Grotto SR80, I tried it, and the bass boost was pretty nice. It was a little bit on the too bassy side, but you know, it didn't overwhelm me the way some of the other headphones. So I mean, I could see where a lot of people would like the bass boost, but you got to realize with 12 decibels of bass, you're requiring like 16 times the power of the amp. So it's very easy to, you know, if you've got the volume up high, if you're using a hard to drive headphone, like say a Hi-Fi Man planar headphone, if you're already at like, you know, 11 or 12 o'clock on the volume knob and you kick in that bass boost, you're probably going to push the amp into distortion and, you know, into a clipping, you know, level. So, you know, for a hard to drive headphone, using the bass boost probably isn't a good idea. But anyway, it's there and it's good at times, but like I said, you know, and it did, the Grotto actually sounded pretty good with it, but that's an easy to drive headphone, and you know, it's, the Grotto, it has decent bass, but it's not the most bassy headphone out there. So anyway, and then last of all, I tried the Kennerton Rogner, which is the planar version of the Rogner. And that's a $4,000 headphone. It's extremely detailed, extremely revealing, and you know, I use that mostly in my comparison between this, the Hip Dac2 and the Zen DAC. I wanted to compare and see, you know, how close they were in sound. And the three best headphones that I had for doing that were the Kennerton Ragnar, the Hi-Fi Man Aria Stealth, and the ZMF Atrium. And all three of them, I kind of came up with the same results. A very similar sound between the Hip Dac2 and the Zen DAC. But if anything, I came up with, I think that the Hip Dac2 I think it's just as good or maybe even better. I think the clarity and detail might actually be slightly better on the Hip Dac2 than it is on the Zen DAC. So to me, that's really impressive, and at the price. So basically what I come up with is, if you have a Zen DAC, or if you've heard of Zen DAC and you like it, this is basically a portable battery powered version of almost the same thing. The only thing this doesn't have that the Zen DAC does is RCA analog outputs on the back. But this is portable, you can carry it around anywhere you want, and it's basically the same sound and just as good or maybe even slightly better in my opinion. So do I recommend it? Yeah, I mean, I'm not really into portables. I don't carry around a portable. I do my listening at home. I sit down in a big comfy chair in the dark and put my feet up and put my full-size headphones on and plug them into, amp that takes up the whole shelf, and a big DAC and all that. And that's the way I listen to headphones mostly. But, I mean, there's a lot of people out there listening to portables, and I'm sorry I didn't have a bunch of IEMs and stuff to try with this. But, you kind of get the idea. This thing has enough power to power, any dynamic headphone, even the 300 ohm ZMF. It has enough power to power most of the planar headphones, even the, pretty power demanding Hi-Fi Man planar headphones like the Sandara, the Edition XS, and even the 400 SE, which is a, pretty hard headphone to drive. It does a decent job with all those. So do I recommend it? Yeah, sure. At the price, it seems like a great deal. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now. So once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. And you're all welcome to join us at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. We're up just a few members short of 16,000, so it continues to grow, I think, by probably about maybe 12, 15 members per day. So still growing, still getting bigger all the time, and a lot of great people over there can answer just about any question you would ever have about headphones. So, I go there with questions sometimes too. So anyway, just wanted to say thanks for watching my video.